Hello lovies, hope you've got your cup of tea ready and you're nice and comfortable, because today we're going to talk about something else that's a little bit different, but it's another important subject that we need to address. So today is it didn't exist in my day: generational conditioning, invisible disabilities, and the online war on kindness. So welcome back to Be Yourself Unapologetically. I'm your host, Becca. Now, the thing we're going to talk about today is another thing that's raw, honest and uncomfortable, but definitely necessary. This episode is about how generational conditioning around invisible disabilities, autism, ADHD, PTSD and more has collided with the online world, and how that collision is shaping the way our children talk to each other, treat each other, and even see themselves. We're going to talk about the phrase, "it didn't exist in my day," about 5-year-olds calling strangers slurs in Roblox chats, about "kill yourself" being thrown around as a joke, about victims being called snowflakes for feeling hurt, and about the terrifying question at the end of all this. What are we leaving for the next generation of babies who are being born into a world that's already this divided before they even take their first breath? So take a deep breath, because this might sting a bit. But if you're listening, it probably means you care. And that's the kind of person the world desperately needs more of. So we hear a lot of the older generation using the phrase, "it didn't exist in my day." You've probably heard it. Maybe from a grandparent, maybe from a parent, maybe from a stranger on Facebook with a Union Jack in their profile picture. Autism didn't exist in my day. ADHD is just naughty kids with no discipline. PTSD, only soldiers get that, love. Everyone else just gets on with it. We didn't have all these labels growing up, we just coped. And underneath all of those statements is one message: you're not really struggling, you're just weak. But here's the truth. Autism existed, ADHD existed, PTSD existed. They just didn't have names that people were allowed to use, or support people that people were allowed to, the support that people were allowed to ask for. There wasn't any. They were called the difficult child, the daydreamer, the lazy one, the nervous one. Oh, the hysterical woman one, definitely. Put on like pills, mother's little helpers, the moody man, the one who needs a good slap. I mean, and let's not forget the children that were stuck in institutions because they weren't allowed to be shown to the outside world. So people who were masking, disassociating, shutting down and melting down didn't get support. They got mocked, punished or ignored. Our grandparents and parents grew up in a time where survival was celebrated and suffering was silenced. Think about their world for a second. Post-war trauma that nobody talked about. Keep calm and carry on, hammered in like a moral law. Children expected to be seen and not heard. Corporal punishment considered normal discipline, and mental health described as nerves, hysteria, or just a phase they were going through. They weren't taught to recognise autism. They weren't taught to recognise ADHD. They weren't taught that you can have complex PTSD without ever stepping foot on a battlefield. So when they say it didn't exist in my day, what they really mean is nobody told us, nobody helped us, nobody cared how we felt. So why should it be different for you? That's generational conditioning. Not just beliefs, not just opinions. It's a deep automatic script handed down like a heirloom. No one wanted, but everybody received. So invisible disabilities, the pain you can't see. Let's talk about invisible disabilities for a moment. Autism, ADHD, PTSD, emotionally unstable personality disorder, anxiety disorders, depression, chronic illnesses that don't shout, "Hi, I'm going through one of these things," or "I've been diagnosed with this," or "I don't really know what's wrong with me because I'm not getting any support." That kind of thing. They don't show on the outside. You can't see them in a photograph. You can't spot them in a school photo unless you know what you're looking for. There's no plaster cast, no crutches, no wheelchair that makes people automatically go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense now." So instead, people see overreacting, too sensitive, drama queen, lazy, rude, cold, too intense. Whole generations were shamed, punished and gaslit for symptoms they couldn't name. The kid who couldn't sit still in class, punished, labelled, troublemaker. The child who couldn't cope with loud noises, bright lights, itchy clothes, called fussy, spoilt or dramatic. The teenager disappearing into daydreams because their brain is overloaded. They were lazy and unmotivated and don't try hard enough. So the adult who jumps at loud noises, can't sleep properly, has flashbacks of emotional neglect or abuse. Oh, everyone's had a hard life, love. You just have to move on. When you grow up in that environment, you learn one lesson very clearly. My needs don't matter, my feelings are an inconvenience, I'm only acceptable if I can hide in plain sight. And then because this is how generational conditioning works, you pass it on without meaning to, unless you recognise it. So you become the parent who says, "Don't make a fuss, you're fine, stop overreacting, you can't go through life like this." Or you become the exhausted, burnt out adult who has nothing left in the tank, whose nervous system is permanently in fight or flight, who hands their child a tablet because they physically cannot cope with another meltdown. And that child walks straight into the wild west of the internet. The internet, amplifier of everything. Now let's layer the online world on top of all that. The internet didn't invent cruelty. Playgrounds were cruel, classrooms were cruel, family dinners were cruel. But the internet did something new. It gave cruelty volume, speed, and anonymity. A child used to be bullied by the kids in their street or their class. Now they can be bullied by hundreds of strangers they will never meet. A nasty comment used to die when the person walked away. Now it sits in a chat log, on a screen, in a screenshot, replaying every time the victim opens their phone. And children, tiny humans whose brains are still wiring up, are learning how to be people from this space. We used to worry about kids hearing the odd swear word on TV after 9 p.m. Now 5-year-olds are on Roblox, Minecraft, Discord, TikTok, absorbing language and attitudes that their grandparents would barely recognise. You see it in the chats. "You're trash. Kill yourself. No one would miss you. Cry more. Snowflake. It's just a joke." And here's the awful twist. Some of the kids sending those messages have parents and grandparents who said things like, "Depression is just weakness. Anxiety is for people with too much time on their hands. Autism is just bad parenting. ADHD is an excuse." Generational conditioning about mental health and neurodiversity has plugged itself into fast Wi-Fi and RGB gaming keyboards. The beliefs might be old, the delivery system is brand new. So Roblox chats, kill yourself, and the joke that isn't funny. So let's talk about Roblox chats specifically, because they're a perfect little microplanet of the bigger problem. Imagine this scene. A child logs in after school. They're excited. They've had a rubbish day in real life, but this is their safe space, or so they think. They join a game. They try their best. They're a bit slow, maybe a bit anxious. Maybe their motor skills aren't great. And in the chats it starts. "You're so bad. Why are you even here? Just kill yourself. KYS. Oh my God, are you actually crying, Snowflake? Can't you take a joke?" Kids as young as 5 can read those words. Kids as young as 5 can type those words. Now, some of these children genuinely don't understand the weight of what they're saying. They've heard it from older kids, from YouTubers, from streamers, from comment sections. They repeat it the way toddlers repeat swear words they hear in the supermarket. But some of them do know. Some of them do understand that telling someone to kill themselves is nuclear level cruelty. And they do it anyway. Because online culture has taught them 3 things. Victims shouldn't show feelings. If you're hurt, you're the problem. If you complain, you're a snowflake and deserve more abuse. We've taken the old generational script, get over it, stop making a fuss, and upgraded it to, if you're hurt, you're pathetic and we'll hurt you more for being hurt. That's not banter, that's psychological warfare in cartoon graphics. It's just a joke and the death of empathy. It's just a joke. The tiny sentence is one of the biggest shields for cruelty in our time. Let's pull it apart. When somebody says it's just a joke, what they're really saying is, my intention matters more than your impact. Your feelings are optional extras. I refuse to look at the harm I've caused, so I make you feel stupid for being hurt. It's emotional gaslighting, dressed up as comedy. Here's the thing, jokes have direction. Punching up at systems, at power, at injustice can be powerful, healing, even revolutionary. But punching down at neurodivergent kids, traumatised teenagers, marginalised groups is just bullying with laugh track energy. When a child calls another child autistic as an insult or says kill yourself in a Roblox chat or mocks someone for having panic attacks, and the adults around them brush it off with, oh, kids are just like that now, we are teaching them something very dangerous. Empathy is optional. Accountability is optional. Other people's pain is background noise. We are raising children who are fluent in memes but illiterate in feelings. They can recognise every skin in Fortnite, every sound in a TikTok trend, but they can't recognise the look in someone's eyes when they're one comment away from breaking. The divide of humanity, bigger than ever. Let's zoom out. Right now, humanity feels split into opposing camps. People who believe invisible disabilities are real, valid and deserving of support. People who think it's all overdiagnosis, excuses and snowflake culture. People who understand trauma, mental health and nervous systems. People who still believe you can snap out of it with enough willpower. People who want a kinder, more inclusive world. People who feel threatened by any change to the way things were in their day. Add to that, algorithm-driven social media that feeds us outrage like oxygen. News cycles designed to keep us angry and polarised. Comment sections that reward cruelty with likes and shares. And suddenly the gap between us isn't just generational, it's emotional, ethical, even spiritual. We're not just disagreeing anymore, we're dehumanising each other. Those snowflakes, those boomers, those stupid kids, those fragile mental health lot, those woke weirdos, labels, labels, labels. The very thing older generations complain about, too many labels, is actually what we're drowning in, just repackaged as insults. And somewhere in the middle of all this, a child is reading, "You're useless, kill yourself," and wondering if the world would actually be better without them. That's how serious this is. What the next generation of babies is being born into. Now, I want you to picture this. Somewhere right now, a baby is being born. Their brain is a blank document waiting to be filled with stories about what it means to be human. They didn't ask to be born into a world where grandparents were never allowed to feel, parents who are burnt out, late diagnosed, under-supported and carrying unprocessed trauma. An internet where 5-year-olds tell strangers to kill themselves as a joke. They didn't choose any of that, but those are the waters they will swim in from day one. By the time they are old enough to hold a tablet, the online culture will already have moved further, faster, with new slurs, new trends, new ways to humiliate people for fun. If nothing changes that badly, they will grow up with normalised cruelty, thinking that constant mocking, trolling and harassment is just how people are online. Blunted empathy, because they've been taught from tiny that showing feelings equals weakness, confusion about their own worth, because kindness will be seen as something to exploit, not celebrate, inherited trauma, nervous systems wired for survival instead of connection. But here's the uncomfortable bit. That future isn't written by politicians alone. It isn't written by tech companies alone. It isn't written by the kids these days alone. It's written by us, by the adults who shrug and say, well, I had it tough and I turned out fine. By the parents who laugh at memes about snowflake kids while their own child is masking their pain. By teachers, relatives, strangers online who choose comfort over accountability. Every time we dismiss someone's trouble with, it didn't exist in my day, we're just ignoring the past. We're damaged in the future. Breaking the script, what can we actually do? This might feel heavy, but I don't want this episode to leave you in despair. Yes, the divide is huge. Yes, the online culture is brutal. And yes, generational conditioning runs deep. But humans are also astonishing at rewriting scripts. Let's talk about what we can actually do in real life, in tiny conversations, in day-to-day choices. So, name the invisible. Start by naming things properly. Say the words autism, ADHD, PTSD, anxiety, depression, emotionally unstable personality disorder. Say them like you'd say asthma or diabetes, not as insults, not as whispers, just as facts. In your home, in your classroom, in your friend group, normalise sentences like, their brain works differently and that's okay. They're overwhelmed, not naughty. They're traumatised, not dramatic. They're masking, not fine. When we name things, we remove a layer of shame. Challenge, it didn't exist in my day. When an older relative says we didn't have all this in my day, you don't have to start a war. You can quietly say, you did actually, you just didn't have the words or the support. A lot of people suffered in silence back then. Maybe that's why many people are struggling now. You're not attacking their generation. You're inviting them to see that their pain was real too, and that maybe, just maybe, we can do better for the kids growing up now. Teach kids the words that have weight. We can't bubble wrap kids away from the internet, but we can teach them that words are not toys. Have the awkward conversations. If you tell someone to kill themselves, even as a joke, you have no idea what they're going through. That sentence might be the thing that tips them over the edge. If you call someone a snowflake for being upset, what you're really saying is your feelings don't matter, and that's not the kind of person you want to be. Being funny doesn't give you permission to be cruel. Role play it if you have to with your kids. Ask them, how would you feel if someone typed that to you? If your best friend read that message, what would you say to them? We have to build emotional literacy, the same way we build reading and writing. Model opportunities and accountability. Kids learn more from what we do than what we say. If you snap at your child, say sorry. If you misunderstand someone online, correct yourself. If you share something unkind, delete it and admit you were wrong. Show the next generation that being wrong isn't the end of the world. Staying cruel on purpose is. Curate their online world and yours. We can't control the whole internet, but we can control what's normal in our own homes. Set age-appropriate limits. Use parental controls where needed. Know which games they're playing and which chats they're in. Talk about the difference between private chats, group chats and public servers. And just as importantly, curate your own online space. If your feeds are full of mockery, bullying and outrage, that's what you'll end up marinating in. Follow accounts that promote empathy, neurodiversity, mental health awareness. Fill your own brain with better scripts so you've got something nourishing to pass on. Protect the sensitive kids. Don't shame them. If you have a child who cries easily, feels deeply, worries about everything, they are not the problem. They are the canaries in the coal mine, sensing what is toxic long before anyone else admits it. Instead of saying, stop being so sensitive, or you need to toughen up, try, your sensitivity is a strength. We just need to build your tools to cope with how overwhelming the world can be. Your feelings make sense. Let's work out how to handle them together. The world does not need fewer sensitive people. It needs fewer people who are proud of being numb. If you're the one who's been hurt, I want to take a moment to talk to you. If you've been on the receiving end of this, if you grew up in a get-on-with-it household, if you were mocked for your meltdowns, if your ADHD was treated as bad behaviour, if your autism was ignored or ridiculed, if you've been told to kill yourself in a game, chat, comment section or DM, I'm so sorry. It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't still be happening. None of this is your fault. You are not weak for being hurt. You are not a snowflake for having feelings. You are not overacting because your nervous system remembers every bruise, even the invisible ones. If this episode is stirring up a lot, please don't try to carry it alone. Reach out to someone you trust, a friend, a family, a teacher, a counsellor, a helpline. If you are in immediate danger or feeling like you might act on those dark thoughts, just contact the emergency services or a crisis service in your country right away. You are not a joke. You are not an inconvenience. You are a human being whose existence matters. And if no one has ever said this to you clearly, I am glad you are here. So, reimagining the future baby's world. So let's get back to that baby that we was imagining earlier, that came into this world as a blank canvas. Right now they're tiny. They don't know what autism is. They don't know what ADHD is. They don't know what Roblox or TikTok or trolling is. All they will know at first is the feeling of the world that holds them. We can't erase the past. We can't make our grandparents' trauma vanish. We can't uninvent the internet. But we can choose what kind of emotional climate that baby grows up in. Imagine this instead. Grandparents who say, we didn't have this understanding in our day. I'm so glad you do now. Parents who say, your brain is wired differently and that's okay. Let's learn how to work with it. Teachers who say, you're not being difficult, you're overwhelmed. Online spaces where, are you okay, is as common as LOL. A generation who understands that words can either build bridges or throw people off cliffs. The divide in humanity might be big right now, but we bridge it one conversation at a time. When a kid says, kill yourself in a game, and another kid replies, that's not funny, don't say that, the script changes. When a teenager calls someone a snowflake and an adult calmly says, feeling things isn't weakness, it's being human, the script changes. When someone says, autism didn't exist in my day, and you reply, it did, people just suffered silency, the script changes. We're not powerless, we're script writers. So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one question. What do you want to hand down? Because whether we mean to or not, we are always passing something on. We can pass down shame, silence, mockery, and it didn't exist in my day. Or we can pass down language for invisible pain, space for complex feelings, boundaries around humour and cruelty, a refusal to treat another human's life like a punchline. The next generation of babies will inherit our technology, our laws, our climate, our politics, but they will also inherit our emotional habits. Let's make sure that when they log in for the first time, the world they find isn't built only on sarcasm, trolling, and KYS comments, but on empathy, accountability, and the radical idea that being kind is not a weakness. Thank you for listening to this episode of Be Yourself Unapologetically. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not overreacting, that their invisible struggles are real, and that they are not alone in wanting a kinder world. Take care of your heart, your nervous system, and your inner child today. And remember, being sensitive in a world that celebrates numbness isn't a flaw. It's proof that your humanity is still intact. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and be yourself unapologetically.